Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this one we are going to be continuing on and we will be setting up our first person character. So if you have our project open, go ahead and under FPS game character, let's open up the blueprint of BP player, drag it across the top if it already isn't, and we're going to be messing around in the viewport. So with our character selected, we're going to add a component and we're going to add a camera, and we can just keep this with the name camera. Then underneath camera with it selected, we're going to create a child on that camera, and we want to slot in a skeletal mesh, and we can call this player arms. Okay, so with camera selected, there's a couple of things that we want to do. We want to check use pawn control rotation. That is one thing that we want to do. Sorry, I'm just referring to my notes to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I think that's actually, for the camera on the Z, we want to set that to 75. So location Z, 75. Then on the player arms, the skeletal mesh that we're going to slot in is this hero FPP right here. It's going to spawn in up there. Now what we can do with this little magnifying glass, it'll open up where this asset is within our content browser here. And what we can do is we can drag this and then drag that into our character folder so that we can see it here. And then we can hit F2 and we can rename it player arms. So it's the same asset, but now it's in our folder and we can access things with it. So with our player arms selected, one thing that we want to do really quickly is search bounds scale. We want to change this to 2. The reason we're changing this to 2 instead of 1 is that if you don't change it to 2, it's going to interact with the camera funny. And depending on where you're looking, if you're looking straight up or straight down, the mesh will actually disappear. So that's just a little weird setting that you want to make sure that you do. So for the arms, the location, I'm just going to give you these numbers so you don't have to fiddle with it yourself. I already pre-did all this for you. X is going to be -10. Z is going to be -150. And then the Z rotation is going to be -90. So it's facing, turn down my camera speed a little bit. It's facing forward. You got the arms like right on the camera like that. That looks pretty good. The last thing we want to do with the arms is make sure that we don't have a shadow because we don't have a whole body. So it will, if I just hop in and play and show you this, it looks a little freaky. And we don't want freaky, so let's just uncheck cast shadow underneath lighting, again with player arms selected, compile, and then there we go, we look normal. We can't see the arms right now. Okay, a couple other things I want to do in this video before we move forward. Underneath the character movement component, this is just my personal preference here. Let me find it. Max walk speed is at 600. I'm going to set that to be 750. I feel like the character walks a little bit slow by default. And I think that's it. So if you'll notice, the material that is on these arms kind of got screwed up by transferring it over. So what we're going to do is we're going to remake it. We're going to make it exactly how it was originally. So let's right click on FPS game, select new folder, and we'll create a new folder called materials. And I'm going to set that to our red color or whatever color that you have. And then over here, we're going to right click and go to materials and textures. Or we could have just gone material right there. Wow. We're going to go M for material underscore player arms. Alrighty. And then we are going to open up player arms. I believe you can do this. Oh, you can. Nice. Okay, so if you hold down T and click, you can get texture samples. And for this texture sample, what I want to do is we want to plug one into base color, one into metallic, and it's going to give you errors, but don't worry. And then the other one into normal. With that set up, you're going to right click and you're going to search a constant. It's going to be just this little thing with a little number in there. And we're going to put this into roughness. And since I'm a perfectionist, we're going to make sure that all these are in order like that. For our roughness value, we're just going to make it something like 0.3 or something like that. And then for this texture sample, so we have some textures that exist within this previous project. The shooter game is where we're pulling these materials from. So this material, if we open this up, it's all kinds of screwed up in here, as you could probably see. That's what we're trying to recreate. So we're going to have to use some of these textures that exist, these ones that still function. We're going to use those. Okay, so the top one that we want is, you can just do FPS_D. And then FPS_M for the metallic. And then for our normal, if you can probably guess, it's going to be FPS_N for normal. And then you should get a preview to show up. So this roughness, I don't know if it actually says, I guess it doesn't. So if I set this to like 1, you can see how there's like no, super rough, no shine whatsoever. If I set to 0, it's going to be really glossy. So I live around the 0.3 range. If you want to make it 0.5, or maybe you like it real shiny and just want to do 0.1, 0.2, that's fine too. You know what, I'll stick with 0.2. So there's our material. You can click apply. That's all we're going to be doing there, and save it. And then we're going to apply that. So it's called player arms. And there we go. So it fits perfectly right there. The last thing that we want to do in our character folder is we're going to right click and we're going to go to animation blueprint. So an animation blueprint is a blueprint that can connect to a skeletal mesh, and it will control essentially what animations you want to play when. So we're just going to go ahead and do this right away. And actually, before we do this, let's do one other thing. So before I mentioned how I like copied these arms, I want to make a new skeleton. So I'm actually going to take this hero FPP skeleton and copy paste that. So we can find that we go into shooter game characters, hero FPP in this skeleton. So let's go ahead and move that into our character folder. And then we'll name it like player skeleton. Why not? So it should be kind of messed up right now. Hopefully it's still able to work. One thing that we can do to check and see if it does work is we click on one of our animations, and then let's do one where they're actually going to use. So rifle idle is one of them that we're actually going to use. So it's going to be like, cannot find skeleton, would you like to choose a new one? So let's hit yes. And we have right there player skeleton, and it'll retarget it to that skeleton. And it hates us and doesn't want to work. The devil of copy and pasting ruining assets. Okay, give me a second, I'll figure this out, then be back. Okay, so I think I remembered how I did this before. So if you double click on our skeletal mesh, it's actually going to prompt you to ask you to create a new skeleton, and that is what we want to do. So it's going to have all this stuff already preset up in here, and it's going to essentially assign this mesh to this skeleton, which is what we want, and so it named it player arms skeleton. So I'm actually going to delete this. Hopefully the computer does not hate me for doing that and force deleting it. We're good. Okay, so I'm just gonna name this player_skeleton. And then now if we were to go back into our shooter game, animations, and we would do something like rifle equip, and it would say, cannot find skeleton, would you like to choose a new one? We'll say, yeah. And then we'll choose our player skeleton, and the animation works just fine. Sweet. So now we have one. So we just have to like manually, whichever animation of these that we want to use, we'll just have to manually click on it, add it to the skeleton, and so it'll show up over here in our asset browser. So we can do that for rifle idle. I'm just going to do that because that is going to be our main animation right there. Pretty good. Okay. So back in the character, we can now create what we wanted to create in the first place, which is blueprint. No, animation blueprint. And then we will put this on our player skeleton, the one that we just created. And we'll call this player underscore anim BP. And we don't need to actually do anything in here right now. What we're going to do is we're just going to assign it. Use animation blueprint with the arms selected. And we want player anim BP. So it's not actually going to do anything right now, but now that is that functionality is now wired up in our character folder. So that is all I have for this video. I believe, I don't think there's anything else that I left out. Just checking the notes and it looks like we are good. So that's going to do it for this video. In the next one, we're going to continue on and start animating our character so he's all ready for when we start putting guns in his hands. So I will see you there.